And so, from last week's discussion on the simple tenses, we will proceed with another aspect of the verb. This afternoon, we will cover the discussion on the perfect tenses. The perfect tenses would tell us of completed actions. This tense speaks of completed actions. It's just a matter of when the action got completed. It could be that the action was completed in the past. Possibly the action was completed at the present time, or there is some definite time or specified time in the future where that action is going to be completed. At any rate, there is a task here of identifying an action that got completed or perfected. Thus, the perfect tenses. In this tense of the verb, we shall remind ourselves of this form of the main verb. Familiar? The past participle form. Take note, past participle, that is not a tense. Past participle is not a tense. It is rather a verb form. It is a form of the main verb. And this main verb in the past participle form shall be paired with helping verbs to create verbs in the different tenses under the perfect aspect. To start, we shall have the present. Let's start with the present perfect tense. The present perfect tense tells us of an action that actually began in the past and got completed in the present time. Take note of that. The action started in the past, but it did not get completed there. The action was not completed in the past, but in the present. The present perfect tense also has its verb formation. As for the helping verb, you get to choose between has or have. Has is singular, have is plural in number. This verb is formed by having the present perfect tense formula is the helping verb plus the main verb. So what do I mean by this? If we have a helping verb and a main verb combined to create the present perfect tense, that means that you will have has or have plus the past participle form of a verb. That is the form. You use has if the subject is singular. You use have if the subject is plural. For example, let's have the verb hold. Hold can have two present perfect forms. It could be has held or have held. Sir, where did that come from? Held is the past participle form of hold. And you get to pair held with has or have, depending on the subject of the sentence. If the subject is singular, you choose has. If the subject is plural, you choose have, and then you pair it with the past participle form of the verb. For example, I'll have this sentence. That's the same philosophy. That's the same philosophy of John Eric of the Great Law before. He has held his breath for some time. We will not use have held. Why? Our subject here is he. In terms of number, he is singular. Have is plural in number. If you choose have, the sentence and the verb do not agree in number. Familiar of that comment? I've left that comment in so many of the STs. The subject and the verb do not agree in number. Keep that in mind. If the subject is singular, the verb should be singular. If the subject is plural, the verb should also be plural. He has held his breath for some time. What does this sentence mean? This sentence tells us that the person he, at some time in the past, started holding his breath. But it did not get completed or done there. It was not accomplished at the time. Up until the present, it got completed. Maybe like 5 minutes ago, the holding of breath started. Until up to the time now, it was accomplished. So right after saying this, right after giving this statement, has the person still held his breath? Let's keep that question in mind. After this statement, after I gave this statement, is the person represented by he still holding his breath, Chloe?
Yes.
Again, let's remind ourselves, the perfect tense tells us of a completed action. Meaning, has the holding of breath been completed? Chloe?
Yes.
Yes. The holding of breath has indeed been completed. After I gave the statement, is the person still holding his breath? Jonard?
Yes.
Again, this statement tells us that in the past, the person was holding his breath. But the action was not completed there. The act of holding one's breath was not completed at that time. When was it completed? In the present. When we say that an action was completed in the present, that means that it was done at the present time. It got accomplished at the present time. Now, follow up. Is the person, after I gave this statement, is the person holding his breath still doing it now? Shamil. Yes, Shamil. I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything. Sorry.
That is the nature of retail.
No.
Correct. The person is done holding his breath. Right after giving this statement, the person has stopped holding his breath. He has completed the act of holding his breath. The act was completed in the present time, and so it is already accomplished. It's over. What if my statement is, sorry. What if my statement is, he held his breath? Did the act of holding his breath reach the present time, Jeremiah?
No.
No. When did the act of holding his breath happen, Jeremiah?
In the past.
Just in the past. And this is just a declaration that there was an action that the person did in the past. That action is the act of holding his breath. He did that when in the past. Period. But if you go back to the previous statement, he has held his breath for some time. The action started in the past. It went on until the present time, until such time that the statement was said. Thus, the present perfect
I can
tense.
relate to that as a teacher, no?
For example, another example.
Solve the project. We'll have more problems with that. Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, go Brilliant. Oh, the silent training.
I have learned so much from this.
Go Brilliant.
Sir, why are you not using has? The pronoun I takes on the plural form of the verb. So it's have. And what is learned? Learned is the past participle form of learn. What does this sentence mean? In the past, there was already an act of learning. When was that act of learning accomplished or completed? Jasper.
You can type your answer, maybe, if you are not.
Jasper?
Yes, yes.
Oh, wait, sorry. His frame is frozen. I'd like to ask Jasper, is your audio fine, go? There's my question, Jasper. When has the act of learning been completed?
Example of a real life situation that applies direct variation.
Again, sorry. In the present, correct. After giving this statement, after stating this line, has the person still continued learning? Is the person still continually learning after this statement? I'd like to ask Thomas.
No.
No, correct.
Let's proceed
Right after the release of this statement, the act of learning has already been stopped. That is why it's already completed. Therefore, people, students, let's be practical, let's be practical. Is it right to say, as of this time, as of this time? Is it right for any of us to say, I have breathed?
The more workers you have in a certain
Is that all right? Is that fine to say, I have breathed?
take the job to be finished.
I'll type the sentence.
That is one good example of inverse variation. And the notation for inverse variation
Is
that
this
example in X
sentence
varies
logical and sensible this time?
as Y. So
Yes
X
or no?
varies inversely. So you're
Gabriel, what can you say?
And
Is
yet,
this sentence logically correct?
algorithm simple equation is X is equal to K
No, correct.
Y. Please take note.
Why, Gabriel? What made you say no, Gabriel? Your no answer is actually a correct one. Why, Gabriel?
Joint variation simply is a combination of global.
Go into what the sentence means now.
X
Anybody who could tell me of why that statement
joint
is not logically correct as of this time?
and Y and Z.
What does this
So
mean?
when you apply this in an algorithm,
What does it mean if you say, I have breathed? What's expected to happen next? Jeremiah.
Y, Z. So it's a double direct
You will not anymore breathe.
Correct. If you say, I have breathed, that means that you have already completed the act of breathing. And after giving that statement, you're expected to stop breathing anymore. You're expected to be dead. It may be grammatically sound, but it's not logically acceptable. Because again, that would suggest that after, as of this time, that's my reference. As of this time, this statement would suggest that after releasing the line, you will stop breathing. But that's not what's happening. Right after I have typed, I have breathed, I still kept on breathing. The process of breathing continues. And so the action is not completed at all. it is ongoing, it in fact is of a different tense. I have breathed is not logically acceptable this time. Questions regarding the present perfect tense?
Direct and indirect as one.
Any question?
So notice that in this illustration we have a direct and indirect.
People, any question?
Variation. Thus, the term is combined variation.
Please. Any question?
So let us go back to the module this time and let's have more examples taken from.
Do we have any question, people?
Here.
Someone came in. Someone joined the call in the name of Erica Lynn. May I know who this is, please? Erica Lynn. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. So Dylan is using the account named Erica Lynn. Okay. If you don't mind, I'll just have to put you on mute for the meantime. You're already on mute. Dylan, good afternoon. Welcome to this class. If there's anything that you have missed as of this time, perhaps you can look into the video recording that I'll upload on my YouTube channel later on. The first part of the discussion is already there, and the continuation can still be found in the video recording as the discussion is still continually being done now. If possible, maybe you could turn your camera on. I would highly appreciate it if you could turn your camera on. Your classmates have also been trying to turn their cameras on. It's just that the internet connection came to be quite a problem for the meantime. So let me proceed. Do we have again any question for the meantime? Do we have any question regarding the present perfect tense of the verb? If there's none, I'll proceed now with the other tense, and that's with the past perfect tense. Being a verb in the past perfect tense, once again, we should be reminding ourselves of the past participle form of the verb. That will forever be the form of the verb, of the main verb in this statement. Has and have, they are our helping verbs in the present perfect tense. There, I could already see Dylan. If you don't mind, I'll put you on mute for the meantime, Dylan. Okay. For the past perfect tense, we will use another helping verb, and that is had. We will pair had with the past participle form of the verb. For example, let's still bring up hold. Hold is our main verb. Let's bring that up again. If we are to put this verb into the past perfect tense, you make use of had as our helping verb, then you add to it the past participle form of hold, which is held, and so you'll arrive at a verb that says had held. In fact, the verb had also exists. There is such a verb as had. How is that possible? The first had is the helping verb. The first had, that's the helping verb. That's the verb had that you could find in the formula. The second had is the past participle form of have. Thus, had. Let's have, by the way, another reminder that we should keep in mind regarding the past perfect tense is that usually this occurs with another action, in the presence of another action. Both actions happened in the past, yet one action happened first. In the presence of another past action, one other action was completed or accomplished. And so you have the past perfect tense. For example, let's have this sentence. for a while, sorry.
If X varies inversely as. If X varies inversely as Y and X is 5, when Y is 2, as is 5 AS,
There.
find the value of Y.
Sentence 1. The principal had sounded the bell when the students entered the school.
X is 4, Y is 8.
There are two verbs in this statement.
And obviously,
What is verb number 1?
But since this is inverse
Chloe.
relation, notice that X decreases from 5 nahimos ang 3. What
Sounded.
will happen to the value of Y?
Is it just sounded? Try to double check its structure.
This relationship is inverse relationship.
Had
Look at-
sounded.
It's had sounded, correct. What is verb number 2?
X varies inversely
Keen.
as Y. So the solution or the formula that we are going to use is X equals KY. K over Y. Let's now get
What
the
is
first
verb
one,
number
which is
2?
X, which is equal
Entered.
to 5.
Entered,
Plus
correct.
Y is equal to
So
2.
statement number 1 contains two verbs. Your task there now is to determine which between these two verbs happened
Now,
first.
now the problem. First value
Which one took place first and was completed before another action happened in the past? Let's examine. Let's go back to the sentence itself. The principal had sounded the bell when the students entered the hall. So which one happened first? The sounding of the bell or the entering of the students to the school? Raphael.
K is equal to 10.
Entering of student.
That value, the
Again, let's clearly examine the sentence. The principal had sounded the bell when the students entered the school. Which one happened first? Which action took place first? Was it the sounding of the bell or the entrance of the students to the school? Raphael, carefully examine the sentence. Analyze it carefully. Which one took place first?
You can have your answer in decimal or you can have your answer in fraction.
Raph?
It's just
The sounded.
The sounding.
Sounded.
So here's the story behind statement number 1. There's a principal who decided to sound the bell. And then right after sounding it, students came and entered the premises of the school. This means that with those two actions, one action happened first, was eventually completed, then came another action. When did these two actions happen? When did these two actions take place? Both took place in the past. As described, the first one had sounded happened first. And so we put that verb in the past perfect form. The other one, the other past action that came next will be expressed in the simple past form. Be reminded of this. The past perfect verb usually exists with a simple past verb. That's the tense of entered, simple past. The tense of had sounded is past perfect. Let's have another sentence.
As long as follow nimo ang operation sa iyang algorithm.
Statement number 2. I had baked some cookies before I received her request. Which one is verb number 1? Shamil.
Had baked.
Had baked, correct. What is verb number 2? Thomas.
Okay, when you hear the problem,
Received.
Received, correct. Now let's understand the statement. What's the story behind sentence number 2? We have here a person represented by the pronoun I.
This is
And then that person did some baking. What happened next? Which one happened first? The act of baking or the act of receiving a request? To answer by the time you answer this, that would guide you on the function of the past perfect tense in this statement. Gabriel, I'd like to throw the question to Gabriel. Which action happened first? The act of baking or the act of receiving the request?
Receiving.
Again, sorry?
Receive.
Receiving. Take note, the statement there says that before the request was received, cookies had been baked. Right? I had baked some cookies before I received her request. So the receiving came next. Like, I did this before I did another thing. So there's one action that had happened before another action. Now, I'd like to throw back the question to Gabriel. Which between the two actions happened first? The act of baking or the act of receiving a request?
And then now substitute the new values of f(x, y), and z.
It's, sorry.
K is equal to 2 over 15, while y is unknown.
Again,
Z is equal to 7.
go.
Nakuha ba na to?
Baking.
It's the act of baking. So here's the story. I baked some cookies. And then after doing the baking, a request was received. A request came next and was received. The baking was done first, then came the act of receiving the request. Both happened in the past. Yet one action was done first. And so the first action is expressed in the past perfect tense, while the other one remains to be in the simple past form. Let's have statement number 3. By the way, I actually, when I was in high school, I actually had the experience of getting so much frustration when it comes to tenses of verbs, especially when it came to having two verbs involved in a sentence. Sentence number 3. Sorry. There. Sentence number 3. When she arrived to the party, the guests had left. Give me verb number 1. What's verb number 1 here, Janessa?
Arrive.
Arrived, correct. Verb number 2, AC.
Had left.
Had left, correct. Now, let's try to understand the story behind sentence number 3. What happened there? What's the situation here? There is a person who arrived to the party. At the moment that she arrived, guests are not anymore there. The guests had left. And so we ask ourselves, which one happened first? Which action took place before the action the other action in the past. Chloe,
Ask the question before.
which one happened first? Is it the act of arriving or the act of leaving?
Allow me to proceed then the solution. Let's write the values of your x, y, and z rather than your n first. Your m is equal to 10.
Chloe,
Your c is equal to 2. Your d is equal
Yes,
to
sir.
15.
which action happened first? Is it when the she arrived or when the guests had left?
Your c is equal to 5.
The guest
Your
has
d
left.
is equal to
Correct.
4,
Yep, had. It's the guest who had left, which happened first. And right after that incident came the arrival of the person represented by the pronoun she. So, before her arrival,
From the formula,
before she arrived, the guests were still there. And then eventually sometime in their gathering, the guests had left. At the time that the guests weren't anymore there, came this person. See, which one happened first? The leaving of the guests. After they left, she came, she arrived. So at the time that she arrived in the party, the guests weren't anymore there. True enough, it really made sense that the verb had left really be expressed in the past perfect form. Any question regarding the past perfect verb?
May tanong ba tayo?
Sir, is it all right to create a sentence in the past with a verb in the past perfect form, but without a simple past verb? Of course, the answer is yes. That is why earlier I said, it's even found in the chat box, the past perfect verb usually exists with a simple past verb. It does not state always exists. You can just have a sentence that says, the guests had left, period. You can just say, my parents had scolded me, period. But of course, if you decide to add another verb in the picture, be sure that that other verb also happened in the past. And that other verb happened next to that action which you have expressed in the past perfect form. Questions?
With respect to the numerator,
Any question? Any question?
16/3 times 5.
Because if there's none, I'll proceed with the last perfect form, and that's the future perfect
Okay, 320
tense.
over 3.
The future perfect tense makes use of the same past participle form. However, two other words have to be added to the past participle form of the verb. You still get to choose between will or shall, yet you add that with have, and you add that with the past participle form of the verb. Again, you just choose between will or shall. For example, let's go back to hold. You could arrive at a future perfect verb, which is will have held or shall have held. Will is paired with have, which is also added with the past participle form of hold, held. Another one, what about approach? How will you bring approach into its future perfect form? Rans. Let's try.
1/25.
Future perfect form for approach.
Which is equal to 320 divided by
Go Rans.
25 times 3. 25.
Go, go.
Divide both sides by 5.
Let's try, let's try.
Divided by 15. Or you can just do that in a calculator.
By the way, I have deactivated the chat box. So your only option here is for you to unmute yourself and then give your answer as requested. Go, Rans. It's all right. You can do this. The formula is there in the chat box. So you choose between will or shall. You just have to choose between the two of them. And then you pair it with have. Then you also add the past participle form of approach. So what is the answer for the future perfect form of approach, Rans? Go. It could be there are two possible forms. Let's try to give one and let's request Rans to give the other later. Thomas, can you give me one form? One future perfect form of approach.
Shall have approached.
Shall have. How do you spell the main verb approached? What will you add?
Ed.
An ed, correct. There. Shall have approached is one option. What's the other possible answer, Rads? I said you can choose between will or shall. Shall is already given, so what's the other one, Rads?
Will have approached.
Correct. Will have approached. See, these are the two options. You just get to choose between will or shall. And last time, I've already told you of the difference between the degree or the weight between will and shall. If you try to give it more of an obligation, you use shall. If you feel like it may be optional, it is just a merely optional activity, you use will. Meaning there's a chance that it might not happen in the future or it may. Please, we have come up here with the correct structure of the verb in the future perfect form. In your SPs, be reminded, just choose between will or shall. No need to present both. Let's try to look at the function of the future perfect tense. We are done with the past perfect tense, present perfect tense. This future perfect tense tells us that something can be completed at a specified or definite time in the future. There's a time in the future that you are sure of when something gets to be completed. That's the key there. The time in the future is definite, specified. So you are aware that in that time in the future, at that time in the future, the action will be completed. Thus, the future perfect tense. For example, let's have sentence number 1.
We left letters. We left letters W for workers. What else? C.
This statement. By the end of the month, I will have mastered tenses of verbs. What is our verb here? I'd like to ask Dylan, can you give us the verb?
What will be the desired algorithm upon knowing the letters that you're going to use here? Sir, is it possible?
Try unmuting yourself. Go.
Ita. Isa lang ba? Ay,
Raya, can you share?
of the month, I will have mastered tense of verb. Mastered.
Mastered is the main verb. There are two other words that you have to put together with it. So what are those two other words? Go.
This is joint variation.
And
You look at the sample verbs that you could find in the chat box. Be guided by it for you to be able to pick out the correct verb in the
will.
sentence. Will. What
Will.
else?
and
Will.
wait. Will and
3 words make up the future perfect verb. Will, blank, and another
Have.
word. Have
Have.
and
and
the third word. What's the third word?
Third word.
Will have. What comes after have?
Wait. I gotta search it.
Will have
Mastered.
mastered, correct. So that is your verb. The verb there is composed starting with the future perfect tense. You will now have more than 2 words to make up a verb. 3 words constitute this future perfect verb. Simple past, simple present, just 1 word. Only 1 word is found there. Simple future, 2 words can now be found. Past perfect, 2 words can be found. Present perfect, 2 words can still be found. With a future perfect tense, 3 words make up your verb. And here we have will have mastered. Correctly identified. Are we sure? Are we definite and certain of the time when tenses of verbs will have been mastered? You look at the sentence. You look at the sentence that we have. Are we given a specified time in the future of when tenses of verbs will be mastered? Jeremiah.
The time that they
Yes.
And what is that time, Jeremiah?
By the end of the month.
By the end of the month. In reference to this month, that is September 30. So we are made clear, by September 30, I will have mastered this lesson. See, the time is definite. The time is sure. The time is not unknown. We are made aware that there is a particular schedule, specified date, specified time when the lesson is expected to have been mastered. Another statement.
So the question is, the time it will take for these computers to be made. First step, find the value of the constant of variation k. So we have here, workers equals kch or kc over h. Workers is equal to 8.
This one.
Equals
When the clock reaches 5 p.m. today, everyone will have submitted the project to the teacher.
12.
That's our statement.
This is equal to
Again,
8.
when the clock reaches 5 p.m. today, everyone will have submitted the project to the teacher.
Therefore, the
What is our verb in the future
over 10, which is basically equal to
perfect form? What is our future perfect verb? I'd like to ask Genova. Genova,
for the total number of hours. We have here, workers equals kch over 8.
Will have submitted.
correct. It's will have submitted. Sir, why is it in the future perfect form? Let's consider the meaning or the idea or the story behind the sentence.
And how many computers are
Does the sentence tell us of a specified time when projects will have been submitted? Thomas?
H is 12h
Is there a specified time?
divided by 5
Yes.
There is, correct. It is in reference to today, plus it is in reference to 5 p.m. Within the many hours of this day, it is in reference to 5 p.m. of today. So the time is indeed clear, certain, and specified. Thus, the verb is expressed in the future perfect tense. It's different when you say, I will master tenses of verbs. If you go with that statement, do we know when the person will master the lesson? We don't. If you go with, everyone will submit the project to the teacher, is there a clearly specified time of when projects are submitted? Unfortunately, there's none. Thus comes the future perfect verb, which is sure and certain of the time in the future when an action gets accomplished or completed. Questions? Any question, everyone?
8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Do the analysis of the
Any
problem,
question?
identifying the variables that affect each other directly and the variables that
Please,
affect each other.
I'd like to request you to ask anything.
Then you know the drill. First things first, solve for the constant of variation k. After solving the constant of variation k, substitute that to the next set of values, finding out the unknown variables.
Your module contains, by the way, a special discussion for infinitives expressed in the perfect form. You have there a statement that goes, I am happy to have participated in this campaign. The infinitive to have participated is expressed in the present, is expressed in a perfect form. So that structure is also available. So you can have a statement that goes, we are all ready to, we are all ready to plan, to have planned for your arrival. Something like that. Two will be paired with the base form of has or have, which is have, paired with the past participle form. Here's a sample.
Not necessarily time. Okay po. Pag speaking of work related, it involves time. So, carried out na po siya na yung time ang yata, inverse relation na siya. However, the idea of work and that time alone. Other questions?
We hoped to have accomplished many things today. To there is a preposition paired with the word have plus the past participle form. So we have to plus have plus accomplished to arrive at to have accomplished. Thus, an infinitive expressed in a perfect form. Questions? Any question? Perhaps something's going to come up in our checking of the FTs on Thursday. So be ready with your questions by then. If there's anything that you'd like to ask, send a private message and I'll do my best to address those concerns. And for that, thank you for your time. Goodbye and thank you, grade 8.